Turning to the space race, Jeff Bezos' rocket company Blue Origin successfully landed its Glenn booster on a floating platform in the Atlantic Ocean after launching NASA's Escapade twin spacecraft from Cape Canaveral.
The mission is ultimately bound for Mars, though the probes will not arrive until 2027, when Earth and Mars align for more efficient interplanetary travel. Until now, only SpaceX had achieved a booster landing at sea.
Joining us to discuss, we're joined today by Leroy Chiao. He's a retired NASA astronaut and International Space Station commander. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what are your thoughts on this new advancement in space travel?
I think it's wonderful. You know, SpaceX, as you pointed out, has been recovering Falcon 9 boosters for a number of years now, bringing down dramatically the price to launch things into space. New Glenn just achieved that as well, and that's a great thing. Competition is good for the consumer. It's good for the user. It's good to keep each other sharp, too. So, you know, it's a wonderful thing that Blue Origin has succeeded in that, and I congratulate them.
Yeah, so many great developments from them. A NASA-coordinated group has begun tracking Comet 3I Atlas after it was detected emitting an unusual alloy and showing other unexplained behavior. The Manhattan-sized interstellar object, which some scientists speculate could contain unknown or advanced material, has now been listed, though, as a threat by the International Asteroid Warning Network. This global coalition works together to track and assess potentially hazardous asteroids and near-Earth objects. So, Leroy, question is, how worried should we be?
Well, you know, of course, we've always been under threat of some kind of a large impact, you know, altering the climate and the environment. And, you know, most famously, 30 million or so years ago, the big impact that created the Gulf of America wiped out the dinosaurs, right? And so, of course, the kind of thing is a threat. It is a possibility, but the chances are pretty small. If you look at something that happened 30 million years ago, you can look at it two ways. Well, we've got another 30 million years, or we're due, right? So this is nothing new. People have been studying this, proposing spacecraft and satellites to help track objects. But at the end of the day, there's nothing we can do about it now. There are people that pushing for us to come up with some way to counteract such threats. But, you know, you got to remember, too, you can always make it worse, right? If you try to deflect an object, you might actually put it more on course for us. So this is something that's ongoing, and we just, you know, I think we have to keep looking at it, but we just need to do the best we can in a careful way.
Get ready. I'm about to ask you a very controversial question. Let's turn to UFOs. A very popular UFO reporting app has recorded thousands of sightings of unidentified submersible objects in our waterways. The phenomena, well, you know what, it's causing a lot of concerns. High-ranking U.S. Navy officials warn that it could pose a threat to national security. The app claiming it has received reports of over 30,000 unidentified flying objects and unidentified phenomena you know, this is actually growing in large numbers, 30,000? So are you concerned that there are UFOs, and have you actually seen one yourself?
Yeah, of course, UFOs are nothing new. You know, people have been reporting them for a very long time, and, you know, most of them or a lot of them remain unexplained, and it's hard to say what they really are. I've always kind of thought that they were some kind of secret government program, right? And maybe that's what they are. I did see a UFO myself, not from space, but, you know, I was just a little over a year ago, August 2024, I was flying my light airplane across the Texas Panhandle in clear, beautiful weather at 9,000 feet on an instrument flight plan, and these two large metallic orbs, about 1 meter in diameter each, one on top of the other, with no visible means of connection or propulsion, zipped by my left wing, just under my left wing, just about 20 feet away, and it startled me because, you know, I didn't see them coming. They're shiny metallic orbs. Why didn't I see some kind of sunlight reflecting off of them before, you know, I got so close to them? But I had no explanation for that. I still believe it's probably some kind of a secret government program, but why would it be operating in open airspace like that, not in a military operating area? So I really have no explanation, but it left me a little bit stunned. And
wow, I mean,
I didn't report it because I think instinctively I didn't want anyone to think that I was crazy. But later on, I actually was interviewed about it by the authorities, and they wanted to know what I saw and what had happened.
YouTube and the web will actually start going a little bit nutty right now based upon what you just said, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, whether or not you reported it. But also, can you tell us more about the reaction you received from the government when you did and from going public about this?
Sure. I kept quiet about it. I mean, for no particular reason. I mean, I told, some close friends about it. We all just kind of shook our head and just wondered what it could have been. But no visible means of propulsion, but it was going pretty fast. They were going pretty fast. And then sometime later, about a year or so later, I actually did get contacted indirectly through a mutual acquaintance to the FBI, and they were investigating because of all these sightings you're mentioning. Very credible sightings, and they were interviewing people who, had maybe were a little more credible, and so they wanted to include my encounter and wanted me to tell them some details, when it was, and all that. Fortunately, I was able to pinpoint when it was because of my logbook entries on that flight, and I don't know what's going to come of it, but certainly we've seen strange things that have been so far unexplainable. But again, I think the most likely thing is probably some kind of a secret government program, but left hand doesn't always know what the right hand's doing, right?
You said it, and I believe it. I think it's a government operation, but you know what? If there are aliens, they can always come down and prove me wrong. Thank you so much, Leroy Chiao.